Good morning and welcome to Morning Scoop for Sunday, January 30th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 216 days, the game against Michigan in 301 days. On Thursday, we talked with Buckeye Scoop's Bill Greene to run through where things stood with Ohio State and a bunch of their top targets on offense for 2023. Today, we're looking at the other side of the ball and talking defense. Bill, of course, is my guest again this morning. Bill, thanks for being here.
For sure, Tom. Glad to be here.
So let's start with the defensive line with someone that we know is in the class, and that's Will Smith Jr. He's someone who is a little more under the radar than you might expect from a Buckeye legacy in Central Ohio. So what do you think of him as a prospect and an early commitment?
Yeah, I think he's probably a down the road project type kid. I don't think he's a guy that's going to be looked to provide depth, early on. I think he's, obviously he's got the bloodlines. I mean, there's no doubt about that. It's a great story. To me, this is a Jim Tressel recruit all the way, and Tress took a lot of guys like that were Ohio projects that I would call them. And a lot of those guys ended up in the NFL. A lot of those guys won a lot of games for Ohio State. Would Urban take this guy a year out? No way. Tress, absolutely. So Ryan Day kind of in the middle of those two guys. And it's interesting, that they're taking Will Smith, a year early. So they must really like him. And must have been someone that really impressed Larry Johnson. And to take a kid this early that's not that highly rated, he's the right kind of kid. He impressed them grade-wise, character, conduct, citizenship, all that stuff had to be right because you're not taking a flyer on a problematic kid a year out. So every box probably got checked for Will Smith, and then we'll see how they can develop him.
Yeah, and they have not taken every single, son or
sibling.
Another Dublin kid, AJ Kirk, who Mike Doss has raised. I mean, he did not end up getting, having an Ohio State offer, or committable Ohio State offer anyway. Yeah. So that's not an automatic thing. So they obviously saw something there. So
yes.
There were a bunch of other defensive linemen you listed in your column about yes, no, maybe, probably, unlikely. There were a bunch that you had it listed in there. One of them that I thought was someone we needed to talk about was AJ Hoffler, because it sounds like he may be a little further down the line with Ohio State than a lot of the other guys you talked about. So I guess give us a little scouting report on him and then where you think things stand kind of right now.
Yeah, I think he's an interesting prospect that he wouldn't be number one on my board of guys you're going after, but he's got length. He's got some athleticism. I think he's a developmental guy. I think he's maybe a down the road guy, but he's a heck of a prospect. He's got a lot of offers. I don't think he's a Bama, Georgia, Clemson recruit though. I mean, so they like him, and they know more than I know. That's for darn sure. So, he's an end, and they need DNs in this class. So rangy kid, you fill him out and grow him up and see where he ends up. I do think things are progressing for Ohio State to, possibly get a commitment from this kid. He would be someone I would list, maybe not in the class right now, but he would be a probably plus, so I think, if someone asked me who will be the next commit to Ohio State, I would probably say AJ Hoffler. I think he's right there. He's right there for them.
As I was going through your article, I was looking at all these names and going, oh, I remember him from camp last summer. And Derek LeBlanc, Gabe Harris, lots of guys we saw last summer at the Woody during the camp season in June. Is there one of them who you think has the best possibility of ending up in the class? Because I know those guys have, taken the effort to come up to Columbus on their own dime and work with Larry Johnson. So obviously there's some legit interest there. Is there one of them that you think is maybe most likely right now to end up in the class?
Well, before they took Will Smith, I probably would have said Derek LeBlanc. And I think he really wants to be at Ohio State, but I don't know. I don't know if he's a taker right now. He might be in the plan B list right now. I think he's wanted to commit to Ohio State for a while now. So I think they could snap their fingers and get that kid. I think taking Will Smith, I don't think you would take both of those guys right now. And I think Derek LeBlanc, they could look at him as maybe a tweener that maybe not big and physical enough to play tackle and just not long, tall enough athletic enough to play end. So I don't know. I think they see him as a tweener maybe. A guy that I really liked, and I don't remember if you were with me, was the kid from out west, the Tassilia Kana kid. He was like ultra impressive. I mean, and he worked with both Al Washington and with Larry Johnson. So he was kind of like a hybrid guy that maybe he's an outside backer, maybe he's a DN, maybe he's somebody that Jim Knowles would go absolutely crazy over when he gets a chance to see him. So he was a guy I really liked. There was a D tackle out of Texas. I don't know if you remember, David Hicks was there with his father. David Hicks was so impressive. And I think he's probably going to stay in Texas. I think Texas or A&M has really got a great case to land him, but he's a guy I would fight that thing till he told me to quit calling. I'm going to keep calling that guy and keep recruiting that guy. Another one was the younger brother of DJ Uiagalelei, Mateo. He was an impressive kid. And when he looked at him, he probably being recruited as a D tackle, but man, he might be a D end. He might be a tight end. He's something. He is something. He's got the size, the athleticism. And boy, I mean, it sure seemed like he and his dad had a great connection there with Ohio State. So he's another one I would take a look at. I was kind of high on Malik Bryant, the IMG D end, is, maybe Ohio State making a move there. Now I think others might have snuck past them right now. So he's another one that I really like. But I mean, there's a group here of 9 or 10 D linemen, both tackles and ends, that I think Ohio State's got a fighting chance at, and a lot of really impressive athletes.
One thing that probably helps with the number of people who they have good relationships with right now at that spot is the continuity with Larry Johnson staying on staff this year. That is not true with the rest of the defense. So, when we get to linebacker, there was obviously a coaching change with Al Washington leaving. And then there were questions about what that might mean for a guy like Troy Bowles, he was another guy who we saw in Columbus last summer, seemed to really like it. How have things changed at all? Have they changed at all with him since we saw him and it seemed like everything was kind of on the right track for the Buckeyes?
Yeah, I think Al Washington leaving the program, I think, has kind of hurt Ohio State here. But we're in January, so yeah, Jim Knowles has a chance to, win that thing right back. I mean, and get Ohio State right back where they need to be. So I'm not conceding Troy Bowles to Georgia right now. The one thing that I was told is that, the kid had a great relationship with Al and with Ohio State, but behind the scenes, Papa Bowles is going to play a big part in this and where this kid goes. Not so much going to the coach you're buddiest with, but maybe to the program that's going to develop you and put you in the NFL. And when you look at that, I mean, obviously you have to look at Georgia, but obviously I think Papa Bowles is going to look very favorably at Jim Knowles. So too soon to write Bowles off, just like, 2 or 3 months ago, it was too soon to have him as a lock to Ohio State as well. So they'll fight that one out, and I give him a fighting chance, to land Troy Bowles at the end of this cycle. And man, he was ultra impressive when we saw him in camp, and I'd fight that one to the death. I'm going to keep calling that kid till he tells me to stop too.
Yeah, and you mentioned his dad. His dad, of course, longtime NFL assistant Todd Bowles. He's a gentleman who knows a little bit about football himself, so is going to know. And as an NFL assistant, probably going to have a decent idea who prepares players best for the NFL. That's good information to have if you're looking for a good spot to get your kid to the NFL. There were 3 other names you had listed at linebacker: Jaden Ausberry, Tackett Curtis, and Tamir Robinson. Is there one of them who you think is maybe more likely than the others to be a Buckeye when all is said and done?
I think they're probably sitting prettiest with Tamir Robinson right now. But, again, you hate to keep saying how early it is. This is very early. They got a fighting shot for Ausberry and Tackett Curtis, and Knowles has visited both of them recently. So you can see, when these guys get hired a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and as soon as they hit the road, they're not going to the Plan C guys. You can see where they go, and that tells you priorities. Justin Fry, he might not even have had an Ohio State shirt yet. He might have, had to wear like a T-shirt he bought at a store, but he was out to see Luke Montgomery right when he got hired, and you can see Knowles on the road, Tackett Curtis, Ausberry. So You fight it out. The next step for me will always be getting these kids to visit for spring football and or the spring game. That is huge. So that would be the next look for me in terms of all these guys that we've talked about the past 2 days. And then can you get them back if, for summer, for camp day? Do they show up for camp? So that's what I'm looking at next. This is such a preliminary list right now that, it could change tomorrow. But, Osbury and Tackett Curtis, you got to get those guys on campus somehow, either this spring for the spring game or a practice, or, summertime. You got to see them again. You got to see them on campus again.
And, there's been a ton of turnover in the defensive backfield coaching staff as well. No more Kerry Combs, no more Matt Barnes, Perry Eliano, and Tim Walton are in now. So relationships are going to have to get rebuilt. And when I say relationships are going to have to get rebuilt, the first name that I'm sure is popping in everyone's mind is AJ Harris, because AJ Harris had a great connection with Kerry Combs, and now Kerry Combs is gone. So where do you think things stand with AJ Harris right now?
Probably very similar to Troy Bowles. I wouldn't call him probably to Ohio State or, anything else, but I would sure have him not dead to Ohio State. These guys have just gotten hired and they need to form relationships with these players. There's no way that probably Perry Eliano had much conversation with AJ Harris in the last year. I don't think AJ was looking at Cincinnati. There's no way Tim Walton, had any contact with any of these guys coming out of the NFL. So you got to rebuild these relationships, and, it can be done. Alabama does it every year. For the most part, they lose 2, 3 assistants, 4 assistants, 5 assistants. They lose them all the time. And they end up signing a number 1 class every year as well. So these relationships can be rebuilt in no time. So it's not lost because Kerry Combs has left the recruitment of AJ Harris. You just got to give Eliano and Walton a chance. And to me, the key is getting them back on campus again. You got to get him back for spring football or camp, where you can really spend a lot of time with them. Of course, you're going to go visit them at their school, but that's not the same. And talking on the phone, that's not the same. And texting is not. When you get them on your campus, they're yours. And you sit down, it's face-to-face, Ryan Day, you can get the academic people involved, the real life Wednesday people involved, the tour. Ohio State has shown if they can get them on campus, man, the hit rate is so huge. So get AJ back again, and let's see where it goes.
Is there maybe 1 or 2 other defensive backs that are just at least names people should know as, keep an eye on this person? You may be hearing about them again in April or June or October.
Yeah, Cedric Hawkins, we got to mention. Mm-hmm. I was really shocked. He committed during the Rose Bowl. So, I don't know if he texted Ryan Day at halftime or what, but, he commits during the Rose Bowl. My memory of Ced was seeing him in camp last summer, and he was good, but I didn't think he was great. And I didn't think he was someone, when I saw him commit during the game, and I knew he didn't commit to a coach, I was thinking boy, this could go sideways. But they took the commitment, and everything's fine. And then I saw Ced a couple of weeks ago, and he's not 5'10" anymore. He's now 6 foot to 6'1", and that makes a big difference. He's not 160 pounds anymore. Now he's 180, maybe 185. Still as athletic, still as fast. I watched him in 7-on-7, and it's okay, now I'm more into the commitment of Ced Hawkins than I would have been without seeing the updated version. Now, Ced Hawkins better keep working, and he better keep busting his tail, to stay in this class. So, but I like him. I like what I saw 100 times better than what we saw last summer. Another one we got to mention is Cormani McClain. If someone wants to tell me he's the top prospect in America, I'm not going to argue. I saw him from 2 feet away, and, really couldn't take your eyes off this kid. He is legit 6'3". He's got arms that cover half the field, and he's so fast and so athletic, and he can change direction, which is really hard to do for those big, tall, long corners, man. If you can get a guy that can change direction with all those moving parts, those arms are so long, those legs are so long, and he can do it. I mean, he can cover anybody. He can play wide receiver. He could be a return guy, and the thing I liked about Cormani is he's a very serious, very shy kid. And serious and shy, usually not what I find in South Florida. They're usually not serious at all, and they're definitely not shy. So he is not going to play the recruiting game. He doesn't want to be called by every coach in the country and bragged about how great he is. He's not going to be doing a lot of interviews. So this is a guy that when I look at a guy like this, and he loves Ohio State. I mean, he's never been there yet. He loves Ohio State. So he's coming up in March. This is a guy they can get because, he's not the typical Florida kid at all. He almost is like a Midwest kid with Midwest values, hard worker, keeps his mouth shut, just wants to get better, just wants, so no flash and dash with this kid other than his performance, which is flashy and dashy a lot. So Armani McClain, you're going to fight to the death here. And when you get him on your campus in March, you put your best foot forward with everything Ohio State has to offer, and you fight it out. And I think they have more than a fighting chance for Cormani McClain.
Well, that will be a very fun recruitment to watch kind of play out over the next 10 and a half, 11 months before early signing day. And you can follow all of that on Bill's yes, no, maybe probably column, which he, again, as we explained the last time, updates throughout the year. You can really, it's fascinating to me to watch some of these recruitments change direction and recruiting, as we all know, it could be a little bit unpredictable from time to time. So it's fun to track kind of where things were and where things are headed. So you can do all of that by you can find the link to that article in the front page, the post on the front page of BuckeyeScoop.com for this podcast. I will throw that link in there so you can make it easier to find on our Ask the Insiders board. And that, because I do think you will find that a genuinely interesting piece to go through and then track throughout the year, because that's always one of my favorite features. So you can find that, and you can find Bill on the Gives in the Bank podcast. That is, you can find that wherever you find this podcast. You can also find him on youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop, where you find this podcast as well. You can so just wherever you're finding this, you can find Bill and all of our other great podcasts. We do. Kevin Noon does the Big Meat Kickoff. Alex Gleitman does the Around the Oval podcast. Tony Gerdeman and I do Buckeye Weekly. Again, Bill and Mark Givler do Gives in the Bank. Lots of great content, all for free on whatever podcast platform you like, or on youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.